All right, you murderers of murderers, let's get right into it. As per usual, guys, give me a thumbs up if you can hear my voice well. I will appreciate it a lot. If anyone wants to talk today, have a chat, whatever, thank you, Miko. Um, yeah, just feel free to request the thingy, and I'll let you on. Let's just have like a casual chat today. Um, really big sort of like hype for this particular topic, even though it's not something we sort of like usually have it on there. But um, yeah, I get asked a lot to speak about topics of like dating, attraction, masculinity, so on and so forth. I'm approving Miko right now as a speaker. I have 9 more open slots if anyone wants to join in midway. But um, general understanding of sort of like what we'll be discussing here, and I realize that a lot of sort of like my followers are young adults, like young male from I think anywhere from 20 to 25, something along those lines. We're going to touch on the subject of masculinity, physiognomy for both women and men, what kind of physiognomy to look for, what kind of physiognomy to not look for, to avoid, right? General attraction, general dating, general sort of like a sense of masculinity, and how to sort of like not acquire those, I guess, but to sort of like lean into it and lean into your strength. So possibly the best starting point here is a disclaimer, like we always do. So disclaimer is this. First, let's agree to come to a common understanding of what we see as a successful man in a successful relationship, so on and so forth. If we can't get past this sort of agreement, we're not going to get anywhere with this conversation. Okay. And again, this can be an open conversation if most of you feel like it. Um, to me, right? To me, and this is a sort of a principle I live by, I will not take the advice of a man who is not in a relationship with an absolute, like a bell ringer, like a baddie, like a 10 out of 10 girl. I will never take advice about dating relationships from a man like it. I will never take advice from a man who prides himself on one night stands and da 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 whatever, because that is at the end of the day, right? A coping mechanism, right? So today we're discussing how and why behind the magic behind finding your own masculinity and embracing it in order to be able to attract the perfect woman for you, right? That could be done in several ways. But first, let's talk about the ways that it can't be done in. Okay. Um, if you feel like you are now in a relationship with a woman who you're not settling with, who is the literal perfect partner for you. So you find her incredibly physically attractive. She's intellectually stimulating. She's loyal and devoted, and she most likely is willing to go the full distance with you, meaning she's willing to literally, jump into a river for you, even die for you, right? You can leave this call. You can leave this space because you're not gonna find anything in this space um, that is going to tell you something you don't already know. But if you are in a situation when you don't have this sort of woman in your life, then we can ask the question of, well, okay, why don't you have this sort of woman in your life, right? And now we can sort of like start exploring that. So again, everyone has their opinion. Me, I don't care how much money a man has. I don't care what kind of backwards mental gymnastics or their whatever reverse psychology, manipulative techniques, charisma, aura, energy maxing, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I don't care what they have. The proof of a man's virtue and value, okay, within a societal setting is the devotion he can inspire in a woman of virtue, in a woman of value, meaning not just any girl, right? Not just any woman who you can sort of like impress over a date or whatever, for like a year or two, and then she finds out your real nature, and she just no. I mean a lifelong devotion and loyalty from a being that's sort of like akin to a succubi, right? By its dark feminine nature. So meaning the man has to be badass enough, his aura has to be primed enough to contain both the dark feminine and the opposite of that. How many men do you know in your lives that inspire this level, this degree of true loyalty from their female counterpart? I know like 3, okay? I know like 3. You might know not even 1 or 2 or 1, right? Again, I'm going to repeat like what this means. So this doesn't mean they have success with the ladies. It's nothing to do with it. This doesn't mean that they're good at attracting attention from women. No, no, no. I mean, they command undying loyalty and devotion from the opposite gender, right? Why is this important? For most men, money is not important at all. If you put women and sex out of the equation, most men don't give a shit about money. That's the only sort of like tunnel vision. The inspiration for their tunnel vision in life is attainment of a female's attention and grace and hopefully devotion that they almost never get through material means. You're screwed. You're screwed. Those are the Andrew Tates of the world. Okay? Who literally, regardless of how many women he can have lined up to have sexual intercourse with him, cannot command the undying loyalty of a single female in his whole life, to the point where he rages against the female, right? And is abusive towards the female, because that's the degree of lack of control a man must feel when faced with the female counterpart to even need to degrade themselves to physical violence. Get it? So the idea is this: what in you attracts? Like, really think about it. Okay. Now, take the image of the archetypal king as a young man. Take the image of the archetypal king. Does the king go out and seek out a bride, or does the bride come to the king? Is the bride offered to the king? The bride is always offered to the king. What does the king do to deserve the offer? Well, he's the fucking king, right? So the king's business is not to go out and latch onto these women, right? The king's business is for the women to latch onto him. But he can only attain this status by being a king. Now, each of you, whether you believe it or not, as you were born a male emanation primarily, you were born a king. Every man is a king of his own destiny and rules over the kingdom of his fate. Every man steers a boat, and that boat can turn into a ship, and that ship can turn into something greater. But understand it, the moment you start seeing yourself as such, everything changes. Okay? Now, I'll tell you why this is important. First, before we get into any sort of attraction or sexuality or masculinity or whatever, understand this very simple truth: one sided love does not exist, it's a myth. Cupid's arrow hits both targets, the man and the woman. One sided love, if you know what love is, which is the inherent recognition of the self within the other, cannot possibly exist in a state where it is rejected from one end and accepted from the other. Meaning, no matter how much you like someone, no matter how much quote unquote love you feel for a woman, know deep in your heart that it is not love unless it's immediately reciprocated. Right? Why do they call it a spark? If the spark's not there on both sides, immediately it's not love. So understand this before you torment yourself, and this is what mainstream media teaches you, and sort of like the Shakespearean tragedy, right? Teaches you, or should I say, the inverted Shakespearean tragedy teaches you, is that you have this lust for love, you have this love to give as a man, and it's almost never reciprocated from the female counterpart, right? Understand this. One-sided love, there are no dead ends in love. It doesn't exist. So love is this. When a woman comes to you and offers you her devotion, right? That is the real option, right? So that is the fate-based, the kindred spirit-based option that you receive. And these could be it like small numbers. It could be like 3 or 4. It could just be one. Meaning what you need to start looking at is not what you're after, right? Literally and figuratively both. You need to start looking at is what's after you. And if nothing is after you, you need to learn how to look better, right? And then you need to put yourself out there better. Meaning this, the highest quality women that you find, right, are going to prime and upgrade your aura. I call it igniting your aura, meaning, like, let's say I'm a confident man. When I walk down the street, I feel confident, right? If someone looks at me, they'll think I'm confident. When my woman is with me, when I walk down the street, right? That's beyond that confidence. Now there's something more. Now there's an energy of undeniability, right? Because they know that our energies intertwine and they mix very well, right? Almost every great sports person, sportsman, politician, whatever, their auras are primed. So understand this. Nobody gives a fuck about how many girls you've slept with over a one night stand. That's baby stuff. It's baby shit. Okay? You and your competence or whatever you want to call it in convincing young, stupid, impressionable women to have some sort of one time woo woo session with you doesn't mean crap. There are men out there who have wives, right? Whose wives don't even like want to sleep with them anymore. Like just stop lowering your standards to basic sexual primality and lust. Up your standards a bit. Meaning when you look at another man, why are most young men they're incredibly enamored with characters like Tate, for example. I'm not personally attacking him. He's just like a really good example for this, okay? And Tate is not a pussy, by the way. Tate is someone who he's a man in the arena. He'll step into the ring, he'll fight, so he has those masculine qualities to him. But he's very traumatized in a motherly trauma type of sense, right? He's very traumatized. And why are most young men enamored with his character? Because their standards are so incredibly low with women. Their standard is like, oh my god, like if like 10 women touch me, then oh my god, I'll feel so great. But that means nothing. It means nothing, right? One queen is better than 50 uh horse from a Vietnamese brothel. It's just the truth of the matter. Okay? So when we talk about value, we're not talking about the value of the person. We don't want to degrade their humanity, but we want to talk about value in an intellectual and spiritual and energetic sense, right? And also remember this for whatever conversation we have now after this. Also remember this: we make exceptions for the people we love. We make exceptions for exceptional people. You don't make exceptions for the people you don't like. You don't make exceptions for the people who are not exceptional people in your mind. So when these people come out and they preach stuff to, oh, she has to be like this and she has to be like that and da 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 da, blah 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 blah. Even if she is all of those things, and she's like, well, okay, I agree. I'll be whatever way you want me to be, right? And then you go and have children with that type of woman, right? What will your children grow up to be? They'll grow up to be what? Incredibly agreeable, right? Conflict averse, right? And they're not going to be very smart either. So you don't want to put that in your own genome. But before you even put that into your genome and procreate with this sort of energy, understand that when you have sexual intercourse, extended, regular sexual intercourse with a woman of that value, right? You also inherit those traits because her energy and your energy, they're becoming intertwined. And if you don't want to talk about energy, and if you want me to talk about in more like material physical matters, your hormones intertwine. You exchange bodily fluids, right? So how to ignite your aura in a physical sense? Have regular sexual intercourse with the woman whose body will create hormones specifically for you, and your body will create hormones specifically for her, right? And during unprotected sexual intercourse, there will be a swap. So you're literally making each other more healthy. This is scientifically proven. You're literally making each other more healthy. You get more testosterone, more vitamins, thicker, denser bones, stress levels reduce, right? She's getting filled up, you're getting filled up. Now, this works to a very tiny effect. I'm going to tell you a funny thing now, you guys. This works to a very tiny effect for like a man, let's say, who has sex with 30 women in 30 days. Because what the male body needs, the female body needs a few times to have sex with it. I, I know this might sound funny, but it's true. For her body to gauge what the male body needs. So if the sex isn't regular, right? Your hormones are go all over the place, right? Because she's giving you the stuff that you don't really need, and you're giving her the stuff that she doesn't really need. So it goes into excess, right? From a religious standpoint, this is why excess isn't, well, preferable, right? So when a man has sex with like 30 women in 30 days, he's getting like bits and pieces of like what he needs, but his appetite is rarely ever satiated because he's getting more of the shit that he doesn't need as well. And his aura isn't primed at all, right? But a male's aura is primed, meaning that he is in his utmost point of physical, mental, and energetic health when he can maintain regular sexual intercourse with a woman whose body can assume the role of passive caretaker for his hormonal health, so on and so forth. This is the big secret, okay? This is the big hidden woo-woo behind the act of sexual intercourse, why religious dogma says don't have it with several people, da da da, because it opens you up to certain things. I'm not going to go too much into it, okay? But just have a general understanding of this too. So, what you're looking for is you're looking for a female counterpart to your energy who you don't pursue, and someone who is willing with through devotion and loyalty to you to want to see more of your energy in the world, meaning they want to see your energy grow, they want you healthy and well, meaning they're supporting you and they're engaging in sexual intercourse with you to empower you. Now, what happened in ancient tribal settings, right, was that um, you could have women picking and choosing through sexual favors the men they would want to see empowered, especially when they were young. So, like, let's say, like, you're younger, let's say they're 18, prehistoric era, whatever. The primary predictor for the health and longevity of the male was early success on the sexual market, meaning the one who the ladies choose gets to have denser bones, better teeth, right? Generally better health, less stress, less inflammation in the body, more antioxidants in the body, and so on and so forth, especially in a situation where resources and bodily resources are scarce, especially so during wintertime, right? So understand you're sort of like functioning at 50% without the counterpart present. You're still great, you're still whole, you're still functioning relatively okay, but you're degraded in a sense. So this culture of mainstream degeneracy, whatever, we're being taught today, or the youth is being taught today, among that youth, some of you probably, and sort of like confessing to that and admitting that is okay. There's no shame surrounding this, okay? You just don't know. So how are you supposed to know? You can't just magically intuit all this stuff, right? But listen here. Sexual degeneracy is the primary weapon for to weaken a population long term. Get it? No one wants you to have a primed ignited aura because you're going out there on the street and literally quantum shifting reality. That's how potent and intense your your quote unquote sex magic is. And no one wants that. No one wants you to be the main character of your own story. They want them to be the main characters of their own story. You understand? These are the people who already know this stuff. So you only get that sort of like reality bending, reality shifting sort of like energy where you just like you're a presence with your counterpart, with your woman, and you walk into a place and you're king and queen, you dominate the space in an energetic sense. So your reality is the dominant reality because everyone they just can't stop staring at you. They can't stop looking at you. They can't stop thinking about you, right? So because you exude, both of you together exude this energy of like, wow, like they must have such a great relationship, right? They're so kind to each other, they're so harmonious. I want to get to know them immediately. So there's great symbolism behind this, but there's also a very important element of that which is material and physical. That's true about this stuff as well. So let's talk about attraction now, because I get this a lot, right? And I admire this, right? Miko, feel free to speak, bro. Just unmute yourself, like whenever you want. If you got any questions, just do it, bro.
I had a proposition that came to me when the space was beginning. I mean, we could actually do something practical if you would like. I could be like a test subject for you, and we could talk why I don't have a woman if you'd like that.
Perfect. Yes, yes. Let's do it. I think it's great. Tell us a bit about you, Miko. Tell us a bit about you, bro.
Maybe I will talk specifically about the issues I see myself having with women. How about that?
Just do it.
Okay, so recently I discovered a big trauma that I don't know if it's trauma. It's something that comes from my childhood. That basically, as you said, my mom doesn't have sex with my father anymore because he's an alcoholic. He's a terrible man by many means. Like,
Okay.
and touch specifically in my home was something that I was looking at, and it was always with disgust when my father was approaching my mom. It was always unwanted, and that's also how it manifested later in my life when I was approaching women. It was like I was causing troubles to them in a way because that's the pattern I saw through my parents. So
Wow.
I have problems with intimacy and with touch specifically. I think mostly from the childhood. And one more thing I think is hard that I didn't have many girl friends when I was growing up, so I never learned to play with women. I'm learning
Yeah.
it only now.
And how old are you now, Miko?
22.
You're 22. Okay, great. Great age to be in, to sort of like build yourself. Okay, firstly, thanks for sharing your experience with us. That takes a lot of balls. I admire that. Secondly, very great point. And I'll touch it like indirectly, like I always do, because it's easier, I feel, for most people to understand this. Okay. Um, the art of the approach. The man doesn't approach ever. So I don't mean that as in like, don't dare to do it, right? You can't dare to do it in a sense of practicing social dynamics. What I mean is like realistically how it happens, the man never actually approaches. I don't know where this approach culture came from. It never existed for me, and it never existed for anyone else until the last 10 years. Okay? Oh, how to approach women. You're a degenerate. Okay? Then I'll explain why. Showing of interest, okay, showing of interest is more than enough to get your answer. You don't have to approach anyone. The approach happens after the interest is reciprocated. If I walk into a room and I win the gaze of several women, right? That's all you need to do. You win the that's what it's called. It's winning the gaze. If I win the gaze of several women, okay? I can then go and look back, right? I can go and look back at the one I choose. And as I've won the gaze, I can go and then approach. So you don't actually have to go through the whole humiliation, ritual, rejection thing that everyone's teaching you to go through. You don't have to go and ask out 100. What do they say? Like, oh, if you ask out 100 girls, one of them will agree. That is the biggest waste of time you can partake in as a man. Be a man, be a king, walk into the room, win the gaze, and then go for it. Again, if you don't win the gaze, I don't care if you think she's the hottest balloon in the room. She's not yours. Just understand that. If there's not immediate love connection, you're not looking to spray your man juices over someone's flesh. Get it? Like in some sort of strange mutual masturbation session. You're looking for ignition of prime aura and energy. That's what you're looking for. So if you don't capture the gaze, just let her go, right? Because no matter what your ego mind might be telling you, da, 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 because these attractions, they're usually not personal attractions. They're attractions of like, oh my God, if my friends saw me with that girl, they would think I'm so cool. Like, you're a tryhard, you're a wannabe when you're 18 to 25. It's true. I was the same, as was every man. You're a tryhard. So, what Miko spoke about now, there's a very interesting point where, for him specifically, it might be more visceral and it might be more out there as an example. But most of the times, you will find that when you why do we always say, oh, you just have to be funny? Because if you're not funny and you do an approach, you're basically wasting her time. So you're just, by the fact of approaching her, you're already not the top dog, because the top dog doesn't need to approach anyone. The top dog walks into the room, wins the gaze, and then goes after the one he wants. So you have to get out of that mindset of having to prove yourself to anyone, especially women. And you have to step into the mindset of, what are my options? It's always great to have options. Here I am choosing the next decision, right? And again, like, the question I always get here is this, and we'll go back to Miko after this. The question I get always is this: well, if she doesn't know me, how does she know whether she'll like me or not? I'm such a nice guy. Sort of like, if you get to know me, women are highly intuitive. They're far more intuitive than you are, and they're definitely far more intuitive than you are when you're young. Okay, all she needs is to look at you, and she knows most of the shit about you. Okay, like, is he clean? Look at his mannerisms. Like, like, let's look at his fingers. Let's look at this and that. She knows all of the stuff. Okay, but firstly and most importantly, requires containment. She doesn't. She already has a kind and empathetic heart. She can already make wholesome home meals, right? Get it? Get what I mean? Like, she first needs containment, so she first needs the masculine shell before your feminine side, which is also great. Which is also great. That's admirable, right? She'll appreciate that. But first, she has to know that you're able to contain her, right? So let's say in the youth, when young girls go for sort of like the more bully type of like dominant fucking male or whatever, she doesn't go for that because she's depending on him for the feminine aspects of containment within a relationship. And by containment, I mean both physical, material, and energetic. She's depending on solely the physical material containment. So she thinks like, wow, okay, like, this guy's causing some noise and some trouble. So like, okay, I'm 18 years old. I have no clue what a great man looks like, but at least this guy's moving, right? Look at everyone else. It's just like sitting in there, like, can't even look me in the eyes. At least this person's moving. They're doing something, right? They're going somewhere. It's an adventure. So going back to Miko's point, um, and there's more depth to this, of course, to his experience. But the primary takeaway here is, Miko, brother, you don't actually have to approach anyone. You only have to win the gaze, and then you can approach comfortably, knowing that she's in.
Yes, I get it. And that's also how I approach this thing, that I'm basically just trying to get experience, because whenever I'm speaking to a beautiful woman that I never met, I just my heart just beats so fast that it's hard to talk.
Yeah, it's hormones going crazy. And this is every man's experience. And I empathize with all the young men today who have this sort of anxiety, because you don't get prepped for this. Like, really, especially in the West, right? You don't get prepped for like, okay, like, when you're raised by your mom, you respect your mom most likely, and you really love her, right? And what's your mom always going to tell you? Your mom's going to tell you, but you have to be like very nice and very cautious and very, da, 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 da. But possibly, like, she'll also tell you, like, well, okay, mom, how did you meet my father? And she'll tell you this crazy story or something like that, on how they met and what he did was totally out of the blue. Get it? So there's a disconnect here. You don't want to be a douchebag or asshole. Why? Because you don't have to be. Like, a lot of young men behave like assholes because they think that's what makes them attractive. But what makes you attractive is the idea that you are a dependable, reliable partner who casts no judgment on her past. Okay? Okay? If some of those red pill dudes heard me saying this, they'd go ballistic. But this is the most important thing, okay? If all you're going to do or be doing, let's say I'm a woman, if all you're going to be doing is judging me for my life choices, I don't want to be anywhere near you. Like, I'm not even attracted to you anymore. Bye bye. Right? But if you can tell me, this is the difference, okay? If you can tell me that these and these and these are my preferences, here are my standards, da 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 da, right? And I think you having done this and this and this and this is rather distasteful, but I can still interface with you on a human level, right? Right? So you can still have that sort of like high standard, but you don't have to come off as like this judgmental jerk. Because what the jerk stuff does is um it makes her want to prove you right, right? And what the non-jerk stuff does is it makes her want to prove you wrong. And you should want that. Again, remember what we said. It's the woman that shows you undying devotion and loyalty, who is an exceptionally loyal and devoted woman to you, that you can feel free to make exceptions for, right? We all have our preferences, right? So let's say your preference is like, well, she has to be like 18 or 19 or whatever, and she has to be a virgin, and her mom needs to be a good person, and her dad needs to have a lot of money. Get it? Like, you make every exception. Even when women say, like, oh, I'll never date a guy who's not X tall or, like has X amount of money or whatever, she will make every exception for you. If you can provide containment, non judgment, every exception is open for you. Um, is she, like the question here is this as well. Okay. What kind of women have sex on a first date? Right? Well, all kinds of women have sex on a first date, right? She could be the purest and the most innocent woman and have sex with you on the first date because she made an exception for you. It's not like she's going to do that for everyone else, right? It doesn't take much IQ to understand this. And I'll tell you another one, right? She doesn't even have to like you to have sex with you, right? She has to like the adventure. So if you're really just talking about, well, one night stands and talking to beautiful women, that's also a myth. Women don't just necessarily exclusively fuck the guys they really like. Who told you that story? That's bullshit, right? She doesn't have to like you, she has to like the story, right? She has to like the narrative. But again, that's like such a weakened state you put yourself in anyway when you're looking at it from the perspective of like, oh my God, like heightens responsibility and anxiety because I'm talking to like this very attractive woman in my heart. Why? Because you have the secret cheat code. You know that if she's immediately not enamored by your presence wholly and completely, she can't let you go, it's not what you're really looking for. And then it's just an adventure. And then if you can treat that like an adventure, hey, I'm this cool adventure. Yeah, sure, you can have your one night stand with the attractive girl, and most likely you will because you will stop worrying, right? Like, you have to remove the pressure of the result. When the result determines your self view, okay, then you'll fuck it up regardless. Even if it works out, you'll fuck it up because you don't want your self view as a man to be dependent on the feedback that you receive from women. So if you can release yourself from the chains of that, right, and interface with the other, however attractive or sexy or hot or they might be or whatever, right? Through what we said, you'll have a much easier time and you'll have a lot more one night stands if that's what you want, right? To a certain extent, like for a young man, that's good for your confidence, right? Like just knowing that if you really wanted to, you can have sexual relations with several women and several types of women in different types of situations. It's how sort of like the young man builds himself up, right? But again, you don't want your ego and your self view to be dependent on the quality and the quantity of the sex you're having, right? So I hope that answers your question, Miko. Let's move on to the next thing. Thank you, by the way. I love this back and forth that you and I have. If anyone wants to speak in, just request the speaker thing, and we'll do it. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you very much. Like it's a super insightful space. You're one of the few people here on the internet that actually I resonate with, which is yeah. Thank you. Just
I love
just
it.
that.
What else can you tell us about? What else can you tell us about that? Like, okay, we understand like that there's a point of anxiety, but let me ask you something as well. What else can you tell us about your relationships with women that you've had relationships with? Like you've like maybe like had of your girlfriends or something, or maybe not. Like, what's your experience with that?
I think that I always screw it up when I get all bubbly and, oh, is that it? Is that it? Is that the love that I was looking for so long? And then comes like my wild imagination that comes to me where when I'm the most unconscious. So when I wake up with like hormones going on, etc., I will touch myself, and it's just like I think it breaks something because even if I don't watch porn, I don't masturbate necessarily. It's just that I still it kind of changes how I treat them later. When I have this night, like let's say I had a wet dream and now I'm like all tired. I wake up, I do that stuff that I spoke about, and then I like have an encounter with this female again, and I just don't treat her as a human. I treat her as a sex object.
Mm.
I
So what changes like specific? Like you talk to her different, like you meet her less. What changes in your behavior?
Expectations. I have way more expectations for what
Mm.
it can be. I'm not there to just have fun, but I get too much into my head of what could it be.
Mm. And what could it be? Like if you had to describe it. Sorry, I'm munching by the way. What could it be?
I
Like in your mind, like where does it go?
I think it's about the dream Hollywood sold us that
Yeah.
like you can't be happy without a woman, without a love that like you have to go for love through all those trials. It has to be painful. You have to be
Mm.
rejected 5 times before you get
I
her,
love
and
this.
then you get that. And I think that
I love this.
this type of stuff, that I just basically have completely wrong view of what love is and how I will meet my wife.
This is perfect, Nico. Thank you, brother, that you mentioned this because a big element of how most young men and most young women as well simulate relationships today is programmed through mainstream media, mostly Hollywood, right? And what does mainstream media tell you? Again, it's the inversion of the Shakespearean tragedy when the external world doesn't want two lovers to be united. Now, it's the inversion of that where the two lovers themselves don't know what the fuck they want, right? So they're like, there's always a fight, there's always drama. Have you ever listened to two teenagers, a couple fighting? It's literally like a Hollywood script. They have no clue what they're disagreeing about. They have no clue even if it's whether it's worth or not to be fighting about a specific thing, right? But yet there they are and they're arguing with one another and it's exactly you know exactly what's going to happen. Well, she's going to say something hurtful and he's going to say something mean and then they're just both going to go home and they wear their little fucking warm socks. They're both going to be in their little beds. Then he's going to text her. She's going to like it's such a waste of time to be going through these matrix hula hoops, right? Where you know exactly what's going to happen, and all there is between what you know, what both parties know exactly how it's going to unfold, is the temperance of emotion and the time that's being wasted to do so. In truth, most relationships do not run on this crescendo effect where suddenly you're very elated and then you feel terrible and then you're very elated again and then you feel terrible again and like this roller coaster of emotions, right? Again, if you have that in your relationship, it means you're failing at your job to contain. You're the container. You decide how far things go. You understand? She will never step out of your containment. So if she's loyal and devoted to you, she will never do that. So If she does, know that you've allowed her to do so. You've allowed it to happen, right? And this is a very hard pill to swallow for most men, not just young men, for men who are over 40 and 50 and whatever. If she cheated on you, it's not, I'm not blaming you, okay, for example, but you allowed her to do so. And when I tell this to men, they go ballistic, right? Especially the red pillars. They go crazy. Oh, all women are whores and da, 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 da. When you send out that intention in the world of like, oh, all women are whores, well, you need to ask yourself the question, why? Maybe all of the women you're meeting are whores. Maybe the quality of the male that you are, your ability to contain, is so regressed and degraded that your experience with women is like all of them are whores. My experience with women is the opposite of that. I find most of the women I talk to, especially on the internet, most of them, not all of them, most of them, they're very kind, they're very gentle, they're very well spoken, they're a good loyal friend. They'll never trash you behind your back, they'll never stab you in the back with a knife, right? Men do that for the most part. Mm, like having that understanding of quality and the metric of quality is very important. You attract the options that you're ready for spiritually and energetically. So, as a man, when you sit on your throne, right, you win the gaze of the women that are ready for you and you're ready for them, right? So, when we talk about the decay of masculinity in the Western world, again, a lot of men from the West, but they have big egos, right? Because they were born and raised by their parents in the way where you're the best honey and you're the greatest and you my little BB boo boo, and their egos get hurt when you tell them you're just not fucking man enough maybe to get the girl you want. And they rage against the world, right? And how they rage against the world is the most infantile thing you will ever see, okay? But I don't care because this is the objective truth, most likely, if we base it on statistics. And if you're a man who's willing to sort of like grow and work on himself, you have to understand the cultural and the spiritual environments that you were born in and how they have affected the development of your masculinity. So how they rage against the world, these men, is they're gonna go and they're gonna say, well, if Betsy doesn't want me, I'm gonna fuck all of her friends and feel great about myself. And some of them go to incredible lengths to do so through manipulation, through altering their bodies, through like shoving steroids in their veins, and they're so fucking unhappy, and their auras are still not primed, right? So understand this: your desire extends beyond your capacity, right? And both of those things are teaching you a very important lesson. You're not behaving like a king, like a man should, right? You're behaving like a boy, where you see like a candy bar. "Oh, I want the candy bar, mommy." And then you run after the candy bar, right? A man must take what is offered to him because what is offered to him is always what he's earned and deserved energetically, like on a quantum level. So if you just want better things, if you want better women, so on and so forth, become a better person. Like literally just be a better man. So what's the difference? I had a friend who had once like who had terrible luck with women. That's his interpretation of it. Even like look at the wording of it. Oh, I have like terrible luck with women. Oh yeah, you have to, it's luck, right? So I gave him the example. Okay, like what are you doing today? And he's sitting at the bar sipping a beer. Okay, he's alone. He's sipping a fucking beer. He's like, okay, like what are you doing today? Well, I'm at the bar. I'm sipping a beer in hopes of meeting someone. I'm like, okay. And when you meet that someone, so let's say like someone comes up to you and for whatever reason, without you doing absolutely anything, Strikes a conversation with you. She's very attractive. What are you going to tell her? What you're telling me now? And he says, well, I don't know. Well, yeah, okay, that's your problem. So now go out of this fucking bar, go climb a fucking mountain, come back from that fucking mountain. And when you're exhausted from doing so, right? Then, and when you're grateful for the fucking beer that you're going to be sipping, sit down at the bar and sip the beer. You'll be doing the exact same thing with the exact same mannerisms and movements, and you're going to be attractive. That makes no sense to most men. But the story behind is the most important thing here, right? The story behind matters. What you've been up to, what you're doing matters because that defines the context of why you're even at the bar. So are you at the bar to be in a state of deficit and like potentially something to occur in your life, or are you at the bar because you just got done climbing Mount fucking Everest and you're fucking thirsty and you want your fucking beer? The way you drink that beer when you're grateful for it is going to be so fucking sexually arousing, right, that you're going to win the gaze of everyone else. And men don't like talking about these subtle layers and energies because they like to pretend that they don't exist, but they do, motherfucker. um and you know, when you realize that, like the quicker you realize it, the better you'll get at attracting women, right? So you have to be first married to your purpose, whatever that purpose is. Okay, the purpose could be some sort of passion that you have or hobby that you're doing, so on and so forth. And the pursuit of that purpose, right? Because there are women who also share that purpose and they want to go where you're trying to go, but because you are a male, you have a penetrative energy type. By default, all men have this, right? The phallic symbol represents this energy. The number one, it represents this energy. The arrow, right? The penetrative force that can change the nature of reality itself through sheer power and force and brutality, right? When you have that energy, you're able to penetrate further into this goal and this passion. So as you're going there, all of these women, they see, oh my God, like look at this guy, like look at Miko, he's going all the way. I want to get on his horse, right? So that's how they come to you. They're attracted to you because they want to sort of like catch the wind of success of where you're potentially going. And then you look behind you, so you look back because you're not chasing a particular female, you're chasing a purpose or a goal, and then you look back and suddenly there's all these people, right? There's all these women for you to choose from. Now, compare how that makes you feel as a man, especially as a young man, of where you have like you can choose from sort of like a set of women from going after someone who's beyond your competence, right? Really think about that. Okay, I proved you again, Miko. Like, give us your thing. Should be a speaker now again. Not sure why I dropped you off there. Yeah, it doesn't seem to work anymore for some reason. Yeah, yeah, I keep proving it, but it's not bringing you up as a speaker. Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yes, but they might not be true, as like
Sure.
most of the things we know are not true because we're fed so much shit from Hollywood, even YouTube right now, right, with all the dates. What does it mean to be a great man?
What do you think? First, tell us. In your opinion, what does it mean?
I think that a good man has a kind heart, first of all. That he's
Okay.
good, not necessarily nice, but he's good. So he strives to make the world around him better. He also has a purpose and he knows where he's heading. He takes care of himself and he's a force to be reckoned with. I think that courage is one of the virtues of a strong man, of a king. Yeah, something like that. But what?
Okay, I think you're on the right. I think you're on the right path with that. So genuinely, we live in an era of the average male. Firstly, okay, like we have to understand that to excel in life nowadays, you don't necessarily have to be a strong man, nor do you have to be a strong-minded man. What the society of today rewards is you have to be a cunning and resourceful and opportunistic and smart man. So, the man that is emotion driven is very successful today, but the man that is emotions based is not successful. The man that is empathetic and kind and gentle is dangerously unsuccessful in most of the modern business markets and so on and so forth. So when we talk about these two things, we have to differentiate first. Well, what are you willing to compromise in your life to be a truly great man? And we can talk about what being a truly great man means, but what you want to encompass as a great man is, well, you have to be a man of virtue and morals. You have to be strong and you have to hold yourself to your word. That's the most important thing. If you say something that you're going to do something, you better fucking try your best to do it. um don't be flaky. Another important thing is like, um you need to have a good understanding that being a truly good virtuous man means that you're going to have a lot of haters and you're going to have a lot of enemies, right? So it's not a fun time. It's not a fun thing to be a good and virtuous man. That's why you also have to be strong. A good and virtuous man is someone who is a natural protector. So people need to feel protected around you and they need to feel like they're facilitated for, meaning you can't just be strong and smart for the sake of you being strong and smart. You have to be strong and smart for the sake where it, if someone hangs out with you, let's say preferably like a woman or maybe like even a child, they need to feel protected in your presence. So a child will feel this very instinctively, naturally as well. So the child will feel like, is the adult, is the protector in the room paying attention to me? Is he looking at me? So if you study the child's behavior, the child will look at you from the periphery of their eyes. So you think you're paying attention to the child, but the child is also paying attention to you. So the child needs to know, am I protected? Am I safe? So it'll look back to the biggest, strongest masculine figure in the room, most likely, like, well, are you staring at what I'm doing? If the child is attempting to ride the bicycle for the first time, they'll look back at their dad, like,
Mad,
like, are
mad.
you watching me? Right? Like, so the understanding of that is like, you can't be an energy vampire either. So you have to be a protective presence. You can't just make it about you. Oh, everyone, look how great I am. Look how attractive I am. Blah, blah, blah. No one cares. No one gives a shit. No one's going to give you their devotion and love if you can't provide, again, containment in the physical protective sense, right? And I'm not saying you have to become like this big, roided up freak show. I'm saying that your very presence needs to bring in a calmness in the room. So when you go into the room, you don't want to intimidate people. You just want to go in there and be like, "Wow, yeah, I'm just glad this guy is here because I feel like more protected." Like if a robber is robbing a bank, right? The women would feel like much more protected there if there were like several strong-minded men in their presence. But if it's like all women, it just devolves into panic immediately, right? So um, it's like a mixture between how much of that is worth it for you, because I'll tell you right now, okay, like from my experience, I could have gone the easy way out and I had several temptations to do so. I mean, that is linked to other more sort of like higher lessons. But if we look at it just from like a physical standpoint, like in my life, I've had at least two occasions where I can say that I could have gone in a sort of like a manipulative route, and I could have probably married this woman who was a multi-millionaire, and I'd be like fine for the rest of my life. I'll tell you guys that story too. Um, ever since that happened, ever since I learned that lesson, like I've never looked at money the same way either, right? So when I was young, I got the opportunity of a lifetime, and I would say, right, some woman like fell in love with me. She's a multi-millionaire. I have no clue what's going on. Like I haven't done anything to do so, and I'm like, well, okay, I guess this is some sort of test. I didn't feel any particular way about her, so that tells me. And back then, I didn't know this concept that I'm teaching you guys now. So that tells me that it wasn't something that was like a reciprocated, like it wasn't love, right? It was some sort of like lust or desire. So she falls in love with me. She's a multi-billionaire. So I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Like I could just go through with it and never have to move a finger in my life, right? Back then I have absolutely no money. Okay, didn't go through with it. Have I regretted it since? No, never. Um, and that's part of what you sacrifice, right? In sort of like a less direct and dramatic sense of like trying to become a virtuous man, right? And you'll make a lot of mistakes. Like you can't go out and trick people into giving you business. You can't go out and trick women into giving you sex. You have to be beyond that. So it's hard when you're a man of morals and virtue, you sort of like become a little bit spiteful as well. So you have to be ready for that. It's not easy to be what we would describe as a great man. Like, for example, do I see myself as a great man? No, I don't. But I see myself as someone who's trying very hard and actively to achieve that state, right? Um, so, is it worth it? Absolutely. If you're on the path of spirituality, if you're on the path of receiving your true reward, which is your bliss and your happiness and contentness with life, right? Yeah, it's absolutely worth it. But it comes at a cost, especially nowadays, because all of these you see the physiognomy of all of these men who are in like positions of power and influence and so on and so forth. All of them are pieces of shit. They're deceitful, they're opportunistic, they're egocentric, they're hedonistic, they're manipulative when it comes to women and other men, they're disloyal. So, what is rewarded today in this beast capitalist system that we live under is not the virtuous man. The virtuous man is hung by his neck from the balcony, right? Um, is it still worth it? Absolutely. Absolutely, 110%. You fucking hate yourself if you're not trying to go on that journey, go on that path to become a truly virtuous man who deserves the company of women that he holds. You become a piece of shit. I don't care. You can have 10 Ferraris or whatever you want, but going to bed every night knowing deep down in your heart of hearts, in the most desperate corners of your psyche, that you are a degenerate piece of shit, it's not worth it, because you're just going to hate yourself, and you're going to hate yourself your whole life, and all you'll have left is you can just go out online or on camera, "I have a lot of money, look at all the cars I have, I'm so much better than you," and you're miserable deep down, right? um so yeah, there's that.
I liked how you spoke about the child's babies basically looking at the strongest male in the room, because that reminded me of my brother's baby. He's like 1 year old, and he always looks at me when I'm in the room, and everyone sees that and everyone comments about it. So yeah, I thought that
My guy, because the
that
because the
built
because
me
the
up.
child, yeah, it intuitively fills you up with positive energy, and it intuitively shows that the child trusts you as a protective force. So another thing that the child and other women as well will notice is like, well, are they an energy vampire? This is why like most women, they'll be very cautious with men who take excessive pride in their physicality, who like just take care, like incredible care of their like physique and like what they eat and well, whatever, because they know that most of his energy is going to go into him. It's not going to go into her, right? and he's sort of like this weird energy vampire, right? No one wants to be around that. Like the trade off, like the connection happens when the male, as the knightly, virtuous, protective, figure, the guardian figure, willingly gives his service and protection to the fair, graceful maiden. And the fair, graceful maiden, who is a sorceress in hiding, in truth, gives her intuition and her foresight back to him. What happens today, what we've taught young women today, is that they can receive whatever they need from the man and give back nothing, right? But the truth is, how you go around that, right, is that as a male, when you're stepping into a relationship with a woman, you need to be her moral and spiritual authority, not a compass, authority. If you fail to do that, it's going to be a little bit difficult for you to have a dynamic with your women that's like, more male orientated. And I'll say why it has to be more male orientated. The man commandeers the ship, even if he's an idiot. Okay? It's the man who is in the arena. So she can shout like, "Oh, like do this, do that, and you should have done this." And da, da, da. It's the man who commandeers the vessel. It's the man who commandeers the house. Knowing that, for her to know that, should be very important. So I had a friend, for example, who got cheated on several times by different women, right? And the mistake he was making was that he allowed them on the wheel too much, and they lost respect for him. He wasn't their moral and spiritual authority anymore. They themselves were the moral and spiritual authority of themselves, right? And women don't do well in in those types of situations, because she always needs the father figure. She always needs the protective energy over her, right? Um, a primary determining factor whether a woman will like devolve into having, you know sexually deviant, like, experiences that are, not beneficial to her whatsoever, is like if the father figure is present. So what they want to do nowadays is they want to remove the father figure, because the father figure is a protective force that says, honey, you're 17 years old, you have no clue what you're doing, and this guy that you like is, a piece of shit, right? And he's going to sort of like be the force that stands between, his daughter and, a regrettable action. But nowadays, the daughter could just call the cops on him, right? Oh, he's like blah blah blah. Blah. So when you're sort of like getting into a relationship with a woman, first you have to establish that these are the rule sets. You know, I'm going somewhere. I'm on this ship that I've built, and you can hop on, and you can help maintain it, and, sparkle it up. Um, and I will, get go out of my way to treat you well, but, as long as I'm on the wheel. That's the most important thing. um and she will feel that, and she will be appreciative and grateful for that too, because she doesn't really need you as much as before. Get it? Like, she just needs you for the emotional containment. If she needs someone arrested, like a bandit or whatever, she can just call the cops. If she needs like a pipe fixed in the house, you can just call the repair guy. If she needs something heavy delivered, she can just call the moving service, right? So you have to understand that the primary currency of exchange you have as a man when it comes to women, who are largely dopamine addicts nowadays, is your potential as a young man, and then also you have your capacity to emotionally contain her, right? So she feels safeguarded and protected, but she also feels, locked up in that tower. Get it? Meaning that, like, I will not allow you to do degenerate things. And if you choose to do degenerate things, then you can no longer be in my presence. That's the rule set. That's the careful, cautious stance that you need to do, right? If someone requested, Project Nephilim, welcome, bro. Tell us your story. Let's give it a few seconds. Yeah, you should be on now, brother.
Oh, hello. Yes, I wanted to ask more about the vampiric side of things because, well, we can all agree that we strive to be the best. However, how much do we or are we willing to sacrifice? I'm talking about giving too much love, how to know when to withdraw, and how to keep yourself safe. Because we tend to talk about like giving this love, but how to protect yourself and how to, have this emotional checks if you yourself are giving way too much.
I love it. How old are you, sir?
I'm about to be 23 in July.
Hey man, when I was your age, I was, hitting bricks with my head. So I love it. Like these are great questions. These are wonderful questions that I wish more men would ask, right? Instead of asking, like, well, how do I manipulate her to go on a date with me? How do I get more quick money so that I can, basically buy the services of a glorified prostitute to pretend to be my girlfriend and pretend to be my wife? Get it? Like, that's a great question. And sometimes men can be overly giving, and that's sort of like a state of desperation, right? So when you're desperate to sort of like achieve attraction and so on and so forth, you can end up just giving more than you're getting. And that's the mistake there is being made in the root. The problem there is that you gave without ever having received. And like, remember, like what we said about the man never actually really approaches. So the man might have the initiative energy, right? Right? But it's the female that attracts. It's the feminine charge that attracts. So in truth, you're never really called to action by yourself. You're called to action by her. So like, when a question is asked, you answer it. You give it your best answer. If the question is not asked, you sit quietly. Like, that social dynamic can be transferred into any sort of energetic transfer. So, okay, situation like she's opening, I don't know, like a can of pickles or whatever, right? Um, and she's struggling with it, and you're sitting there by her side, right? uh, the fool goes in and helps her without her asking, right? The wise man waits for her to ask. Let her try, let her fail. When she comes to you, hey, can you help me? Like, get it? So now you're already receiving you're the first receiving the energy. Um, a lot of men, what they fall for today, and a lot of young women will test them like this, and they're right for doing so, by the way. So, um, they'll try to make you insecure in a sense where you'll go and you'll talk to a woman, and you're like, hey Betsy, here's some flowers I bought for you. That's already like too much. Here's some flowers that I bought for you, right? And she's like, oh, that's so sweet of you, right? But like Thomas from next door, he also brought me flowers, and he ran like 2 kilometers just to get them to me. So the boy gets offended in this case, right? The boy steps into competition, and he's like, what? Thomas from next door ran 2 kilometers to get you flowers. I am going to run three, dearest Betsy, and I will get you your flowers after having run 3 kilometers. So you start like running around with your stupid. Imagine how fucking stupid you look, right? And Betty, meanwhile, or Betsy or whatever, she's thinking like, wow, if it's so easy to manipulate this guy to get him off of his game, to like emotionally affect him, then imagine what kind of a shitty partner they would make, right? But the wise man in this case, or the wise young man, let's call him that, right? They don't they don't even enter the competition with the other. during the shit test, and all they say is like, "Oh, really? Wow, that's really cool. Good for him. Good for him if he did that." Right? So you have to understand that over like initiating, like excessive over initiation is never a masculine trait, right? The person who like, it's a party or whatever, and they jump on the fucking table and they start like yelling shit and chugging beers, like they're the least attractive person in the room. Nobody gives a shit about them. Like everyone just stares at them because there's peripheral movement in the eye. Get it? So it's just like a physical thing. Um, you have to understand that you don't ever have to act on your own, well, on your own at all. And you won't fall into the trap of just having given so much that now you feel like she has to give back, and she's not even attracted to you at that point to give you anything back.
Yes, and supposedly, actually, I won't bullshit you because I have this sort of problem. So I guess we all learn from me now. So
Sure.
I think I have been giving way too much, and yeah, it feels like I've drained myself. So my question was rather, how do you, well, how do you remain or retain this self-love when you feel like you've given way too much without falling into the depths of resentment and without feeling like it's a transaction now? This is what I'm beginning to fear, the resentment, not necessarily the giving, because it's a lesson, but the resentment. How do you protect yourself in this very moment where you feel like you do not have what it takes?
Is this an ongoing thing, or is this something that happened in the past?
Yeah, it's an ongoing thing.
Well, first, that you remove yourself from the situation and you change the rules, right? You change the rule set, and you can change the rule set because you're the containing factor. So let's say if you've given too much, and yet you find yourself that you keep giving too much, right? Now you caused yourself a problem, and you caused the other person a problem too, because you've normalized it for them. So for them, it's not even like some, like when you hold the door 110 times, right? It becomes sort of like a necessity. It's not a favor anymore, right? So holding the door has to, like, okay, another example. Um, let's say you're in school or whatever, right? And the kid who always gets straight A's in whatever they do, right? It's like a normalcy. It's normal for everyone. Is like, of course they're just gonna get the highest score and everything, whatever, whatever. That kid is busting their balls to get that high level result. They're busting their balls. But the crappy kid who always gets like D's, and when the crappy kid gets a B, it's a celebration. Get it? So it's a contrast thing. And this is largely what we would say a quote unquote NPC thing. Like this is how NPCs react, because NPCs react a lot to contrast. So what you're telling me has me feeling that you're intimately involved with someone who's not particularly aware yet, right? Like someone who does not have like a high degree of awareness, because well, if they did, they would notice your quote unquote sacrifice. But if they don't, again, you have to serve as the containing person, as the containing force, and you have to serve as the moral and spiritual authority for that person. So what I'm basically telling you is that you have to teach them of how to be grateful for the things that you provide for them, right? You have to teach them. There's no other way. And only then will they develop over time gratitude, for what you've taught them. And then over time, they'll also develop the respect for you, right? As sort of like the leading force and the containing force of the relationship.
All right, thank you very much.
Appreciate you, my friend. Again, if anyone wants to come up, let's do it. This is like a gonna be a big one, but we've been meaning to do this for a while. Um, talk about. physiognomy and how that relates. And Miko, if you want to say anything, bro, just go for it.
Yeah, I have a question. So
Sure.
I think Ten Commandments are fantastic, but I don't know if I understand one in particular well. So, for example, when you have "you shall not kill your brother" or like just anyone, it's not about killing because you can kill in self-preservation. It's about murder, that you shall never murder.
Mhm.
But what about the fact that you should never sleep with someone else, women, uh, in the spiritual realm? Let's say, how, what determines whether she's your wife or your partner?
Mm,
Because let's say if that's like a great sin to fuck someone else's women, but what if their relationship was dysfunctional and you are
mm,
the force that she meets that will tear up her old life in exchange
mm.
for
Great
probably
question.
something better that might happen when she finally breaks up, when she sees like that, oh, I can get something better. Like
Great question.
i had I have problems morally that, like, this just this one sentence in Bible just keeps me away from pursuing or like being open to females that have someone on their eyes or they're sleeping with. But I know just for the fact that when the marriage is up, I can't touch her. That's like my feeling. But if she's only fucking him, like, I think the gates are open. Maybe that's what is required from me. So that's my question.
That's a great question. So, um, most young men, including myself, will most probably have um, a large portion of their early sexual encounters with women who are coming off of um, dysfunctional relationships, so be it marriage or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, right? Now that's someone who's already they've already made that choice, right? So they've a lot of guys feel like I'm just gonna scold them really hard for stuff like this, but I've done it more times than I'd like to admit, and I'm sure everyone has. Um, the lesson behind that is this, okay? There is no such thing as another man's woman. There's no such thing. No man owns a woman if the woman herself does not decide that she is owned by the man. So the very fact that she's willing to sleep with you or even entertain you or amuse time with you or fuck with you or whatever, whatever, anything outside of genuine, pure, innocent friendship, she has decided that she is no longer owned by anyone. What that part of the commandment actually says is do not tempt someone else's woman. Now that's a lot more different. Now, if you go out of their way, and I'm sure everyone has had this experience, when you get a really good girl around you, she's like a high value woman, you'll get these satellites, these idiots who don't know the damage they're causing to themselves and others, who will pretend to be their friend, right? Like, oh, we're just friends, and he's such a nice guy, and I can talk to him, and da da da. Shut it off immediately. There's no such thing as a male friend. No such thing as a male friend. Her male friend is your male enemy. Because the moment your relationship with this wonderful woman enters turbulence, if there's any sort of turmoil, really remember what I'm saying here because you're going to experience this one way or another, especially when you find the girl, when you find your girl. They're going to be like a fucking hyena. You know what hyenas do, right? They'll trail a wounded animal to the point until it's unable to resist, right? For days, even weeks. This is what these men do. Like highly desperate men, they can only get it on with women who are coming off of dysfunctional relationships or some sort of drama or some sort of infighting, and they're waiting for the moment. And when that moment happens, he's going to give her the talk. And the talk is, oh my God, you deserve like so much more. He's so controlling, right? He's so like this and this, blah, blah, blah. And then he'll make the move. When your woman is at her lowest and at most vulnerable. Now, most women will fall for this, okay? Because the moment you have some sort of falling out with your woman, she no longer feels safe and secure and protected. So her way of lashing out is like, okay, I'm gonna like find something, and they are incredibly remorseful usually when something like this happens. And most men don't take them back. And in my opinion, you shouldn't take her back if there was any sort of like physical betrayal. If there's any sort of physical betrayal, that's it. Done. Never, never, ever, even beyond the exception making, right? Because it's going to tank and kill your ego as a man and you'll be useless for the rest of your life. If there is no physical element to the betrayal, you can consider making that great exception for her. It's going to make her loyal to you for life. Um, but the understanding here is this: do not tempt neither man or woman who you see and you know are in a loving connection, a loving relationship, right? If she agrees to be tempted, right? If she agrees to be tempted, that's her decision. But responsibility is on you as well as the force doing the tempting. That's why. That's a big, 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 big weight on your back. Most likely you will have to repay that because when you find your relationship, it's not super direct like that, but when you find your relationship, other men are going to come out and they're going to start tempting your lady, right? And you'll have to go through like a painful moment where, you know, you'll, if you really, really love her, you'll have to forgive her some sort of trespass, right? Not a physical one, not a material one, but never a physical one, but because that's at the cost of your manhood and your confidence. But you will have to eventually you'll find yourself trying like having to forgive her some sort of trespass because you love her and you'll make the exception for her, right? And that shouldn't make you feel like a lesser man, but most likely men who have fucked up like that, myself included, men who have made that mistake of being like a tempter, you know, you know, the universe will get it back from you 100%. It's going to fuck you up. It's going to fuck your ego. It's going to make you humble. Um, we're not perfect, none of us are. And you still might like indirectly, tempt someone by whatever. It's like, just don't make it into an intention. Don't make it into a game plan like some men do, because those are the lowest, most miserable, idiotic men you will find. But it's an interesting topic, you know. Um, and especially like when like if the woman decides it's done and she makes herself available to you, you can just feel zero responsibility. You can just feel like, whatever. If you've already signed off on sort of like having this sexual encounter, then there's nothing I can do. It's actually like sort of I would even say argue that it's sort of wrong when the male starts talking there in a sense of like, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, blah 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 blah. Why are you making the choice for her? She has made her choice. She is her own human being, right? So there's also that. Um, like generally, you don't even want to date, right? Because most of these functional elements that come out during date, you don't want to date. Like, um, in my mind, the most desired men and the most successful men, they never date, right? Because what is dating? It's just like proving to someone over a costly like through the cost of time and energy and money, that you're a worthy partner or choice, right? When you can be proving that to each other through a single gaze over a dimly lit room somewhere in a nice bar or restaurant. That's all it takes. So the very fact that, like, how do I explain this to you guys? I'll tell it like this. If she's not completely enamored by you and absolutely into you, by all means, in the very first hour of your meeting, right? It's not even worth it. It's not even worth pursuing the woman, right? Um, you don't need 3 weeks of dating. You don't need 4 years of dating to understand if someone is the right person. Because if you feel like you do need that, or she feels like she needs that, you're just dealing with someone who is incredibly indecisive, and someone who's very confused, and someone who doesn't even know what they want, right? So that's an important element there as well. So I always say, like, there's no such thing as a date beyond the first date. Any next date doesn't exist. Only the first date is real, right? You meet someone, you feel their energy, they feel your energy. The type, if they're not completely enamored by you from the very first date, just go move on to the next one. Don't waste your time. A lot of guys, a lot of men waste their time proving shit to women that they know deep down are not, how to say, like, quote unquote theirs. Get it? Like, go see if you get it. Great. I don't want you. If you're not like completely all over me on the very first hour of our meeting, I am not interested. Deal with your own stuff, because what those types of relationships devolve to, and if it's a dysfunctional woman, with like high neuroticism and high anxiety, what those things devolve to is, she's going to start giving you all of these hoops to jump through, right? And she's going to say, well, but I have like anxiety, and I have like OCD, and I have ADHD, and I have trauma. I don't care. Trauma doesn't care when love is in the picture, right? I don't care if you have terrible trauma from your childhood. If I was worth it as a man to you, you would have jumped on me regardless, right? So, um, are some women worth pursuing if they're struggling with their past trauma? Yes. So there's a big difference between her telling you, her like almost like cock blocking you and telling you, like, I have like all these traumas, and you'll have to facilitate all of these things for me to even entertain the idea of, having something with you. No, get away. If she's genuinely authentically trying to get closer to you, but she's struggling with her trauma, yeah, then, be a man, provide the containment, be the containing force, allow her to flourish. When you allow her to flourish within your energy, like, let's say you're a homemaker, you make a home, you put her in that house. I don't care how you know her. I don't care how she behaves outside of that, s- you know, your domicile. Within the privacy of your bedroom, within the privacy of your coexistence in a single space, she has to be an animal for you and be happy in there. You can't leave a single insecurity or some sort of sexual taboo or whatever, anything with your woman. Whatever you leave unexplored will remain there unexplored. And if the external world offers that to her, she will want to take it. So it's your job to unfold her psyche. She can't unfold her psyche on her own because she doesn't feel secure to do so. So this is why we talk about non-judgment. Well, first you have to establish the report that she is not in a state where she's brutally judged, because that's what the world gives her. So other men judge her, and other women judge her even more. So you need to provide containment for, you're not judged here. You can unfold, you can blossom into whatever you want to blossom into here within my protective container, right? Super important. And the gifts that she'll give you outside of the physical stuff that we talked about, Well, she'll give you like less inflammation, more health, more testosterone, denser bones, better teeth, everything, right? Hormonal balance. She will give you her intuition and her foresight, and always listen to that. Like I know like men who are with great women, who are absolutely wonderful women, and they're not using they're like underestimating their power, and they're undervaluing their power. They're not even using the power of her intuition and foresight, which is probably elevated due to their regular intercourse, right? So they're not even using her quote unquote feminine superpowers that they could be using. Don't make that mistake, right? Um, and we could talk about like physiognomy, and we could talk about that portion of it, but even in this sense, I think it's like extra. What you should be aware of is like when you choose the woman you choose, right? There will be an element of physical attraction, of course, but don't choose sheerly out of the physical attraction. Choose by the degree of devotion and loyalty she shows you. And your girl, the girl who truly wants to be under your wing, she will go to great lengths to prove that. And don't settle with like just the bare minimum. Don't have low standards. This is the greatest challenge for young men. Like, if you have an experience with a girl who, like, I don't know, like she bought you ice cream, and to you that means the world. Oh my god, it means, like how sometimes you get those memes when guys go, oh my god, she told me a compliment, it means the world to me. No. Okay, your mom can tell you better compliments. She's a lady too, get it? Like, understand this. She really has to go through mud and muck. She really has to prove it. Just because she's a girl and you feel sort of like sorry for her, don't let her off the fucking hook. She really has to prove it. And when she does, like, trust me, even if you're unattracted to her, right? But you accept her into your, like, under your wing, when she goes through the mud and muck for you, right? And she's like exhausted for you and troubled for you and anxious for you, right? And lusting for you, and she's standing in front of you, like she's standing before you like that, with that degree of vulnerability. Shit, man, you learn to love that girl. You learn to love that girl, right? You need to allow her to prove it though, right? Because you have other options, and that's how it should always be. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to speak up. Request the thingy. Request the thingy, you guys. Whatever. It can be a stupid question. It can be a funny question. It can be an off-topic question. Whatever, whatever. Because if not, I'm going to talk about one more thing, and then I'm going to close this thing up. But the one thing we talk about is also very important.
What is the importance of heart when it comes to living your life and having this impeccable aura that attracts everything, that is able to bend reality? Is this the story from the Egypt about your heart being lighter than the feather when you die? Is that part of what this game is about? Of having that pure heart, that good, loving, compassionate heart that is ignited with passion and just inspires everyone where it goes. Is that like part of what we're doing here? All?
So, I would say it's a substrata of that. The symbolism behind the heart being as light as the feather, is is part of the higher work. But by higher work, I mean if you are to advance beyond the limitations of our world and this has nothing to do with dating or attraction or masculinity, by the way. This is like high level stuff. But if you are to advance beyond it to the next stage, then why do we call it a heavy heart, right? You have to be so in tune and so in harmony and so in balance with all of your past lives, with not a single sliver of regret remaining, right? Because emotion is a denser thing; it weighs down the heart, right? Um, then only then you will be able to pass. Only then will you be able to pass. Your heart will not be devoured by the heart devouring monster, right? As the Egyptians have it in their mythos. Um, and that's not necessarily a scary thing. You just have to understand that to go beyond this realm, that you will have to make peace with, most of your vices, most of your past, most of everything. But until you can achieve that state, until you can get to that point, you're going to keep repeating your lesson over and over and over and over and over again. But does this relate somehow to that? So I would say, in a very indirect way, it can. But when we talk about priming your aura, and having that reality bending effect, this is like, in a physical, material sense, this is what it means. Like, um, for example, right? If I'm in a wonderful relationship with my wonderful partner and we have regular sexual intercourse and we have a great time together, she would die for me, I would die for her. Whenever we go to a restaurant or like a bar together or some fancy gathering, all everyone talks about is like, wow. And this is like, they can't stop themselves from saying it. Wow, you guys are such a great couple, amazing couple. You'll get that from random people on the street. You'll literally get that from random people on the street constantly. You guys are so great. You're wonderful. Wow. Like, because you're going to carry that energy of like, okay, I'll give you an example of how memories are formed according to the dominant reality. Um, when you're crossing the street, right, and something happens, right, something majestic happened on that street, let's say, um, I don't know, like, a red car, um, saved someone else from being hit by another car, right? Why does the red car stand out? Well, because it's and to sort of like align this with, let's say, the Matrix movies, the lady in red, right? Why does the lady in red stand out among the masses? Well, she stands out because she is the most noticeably dominant energy in a contrasting sense within that quantum field. So everyone who ever remembers that moment, since it passes, will first remember the red lady, and then the mind will reconstruct the rest of the memory from within the totem of the substratum memory of the red lady. So if something happened on the street where a red car crossed, right? what's what does your mind latch onto? It latches onto the red car and then reconstructs the memory according to the red car, of like where it was, where it came from, how, like, which degree was its nose aimed at, right? Like who was sitting in it, so on and so forth. So how memories are formed, quite literally, and how reality is formed is is through and within the context of dominant the most hierarchically dominant energy that's present in that moment. So deep down, regardless of your belief system or whatever you want to believe, your brain, your higher mind, and your lower mind both understand at any given moment who and what is the most intriguing, impactful element of any situation you get, any room you enter. So when you enter the room, if there's this perfect couple who look perfect together, your whole brain will create the memory, will retain the memory of that space with their imprinted energy, right? And 10 years from then, when you're remembering that moment, let's say you're telling your friends or your partner, hey, remember that one time we were at this place, there was this awesome couple who was, get it? Like the the mind knows what the ego doesn't want to admit to itself, the mind knows. So you become the dominant energy. You become the driving force of the situation. And the moment you and your partner, let's say your auras are primed, the moment you leave that room, the attitude changes. The room is not the same. You ever had that feeling, like those of you who are more sensitive to energies and emotion, you ever had that feeling like you're having a great time at a family gathering or party and someone leaves and it's just like they take the whole party with them. It's like you just take the whole thing away, right? It's a similar thing because you've lost this very conscious, very aware, very enlightened, awakened energy that was in that room, and now it's sort of like empty, right? And the party dies out. So that's sort of like how you relate to it. That's how it's spotted and observed. If you're looking for something that's observable, every moment in life, every moment in space time has a main defining character who defines the attitude and the energy, right, of where they are through their aura. And when it's a female and a male and their auras are primed, right, they're far more powerful. So they obviously define it more. Obviously, they define it more. Even if they like just recently had sexual intercourse, right? And they depart from one another, they're away from one another, the energy still lingers for several hours, 6, 7, 8 hours. The energy still lingers in the aura. So they're still empowered, right? So you could go and you'll still be empowered if you're just completely alone, right? And not with your partner at all times. That's why the regular sex matters so much. Okay, last thing, let's touch on a bit of physiognomy now. I guess so, like what you're attracted to, and so on and so forth. But I want to talk to you about your own physiognomy, okay, and how attraction works for those. Because I get this a lot. I get this a lot, and it's a little bit sad, but I'm ugly. People will tell me, right? Like, and I feel really ugly. I don't feel attractive at all. So, three things before we even talk about attraction. Three primary things. One, cleanliness, purity, hygiene. Okay? No one should need to teach you this. Cleanliness, purity, hygiene. This is a given. I don't care how fucking ugly you are. I can forgive you for being, you know, the hunchback of Notre Dame, but I can't forgive you if you smell weird. I can't. And no one else should. And no one else will. Uh, Purity, hygiene, cleanliness. Number one, be squeaky clean. Take care of your nails. Take care of your hair. Take care of your beard. Take care of your body. Take care of everything. As a man, it's very important to exude purity and cleanliness. The man who exudes hygiene and purity and cleanliness, that man to a woman, when they're like sweaty and muddied up and shit after a long, hard days of work, is hot and attractive. But the man who's smelly and who's unhygienic most of the times, the one day they wash themselves, they're still unattractive. Don't ask me how that magic works, it just does. Cleanliness, that's number one. Number two, the listen very carefully here. The quality of your communicative efforts should not depend on who you're communicating to. I'll repeat again. The quality of your communicative effort should not depend on who you're being communicative with. If you find yourself saying, well, I'm great at communicating with people, but when you communicate it to your friend, with your friend Brian, and you're doing great, and then when you're communicating with Brian's sister, who's really hot, right? And you find yourself mumbling and stumbling, you have not done your homework. Your communication should not depend on an external source. Doesn't matter who you're talking to. If you struggle to communicate with a specific person in a specific way like you usually normally do, it's because you're being a fake ass. No one likes a fake ass, especially women. Remember, they're highly intuitive. Just communicate like you normally do. Language is the most attractive thing before attraction. How someone communicates, their tone, their vibrations, the cadence of their voice. Number one is hygiene. Number two is language. No actually high value woman will ever entertain someone who speaks and talks like a degenerate. And if they do, they are not a high quality woman, they're a prostitute. That's how you can tell, literally. That's literally how you can tell a prostitute, right? Is she hot? Is she with someone who talks like a degenerate? Prostitute. Go next. Number two, those two things. Number three, especially for young men, and this is before we even get to the point of attraction, okay? How do we say this? Um, Environment matters, okay? Like when a woman likes you, she won't immediately tell you that she likes you. This is a self defense mechanism that she has. She will have an internal bias. So, for example, if my friend tells a girl that I'm a nice, funny, hot, attractive, successful guy, she will have that pre existing bias. Understand that there's no reason women are not looking to dislike you. They're actually looking for things in you to like you for. This is all women, period. No woman is out there looking for things to not like about you. So, if there is a pre-existing bias, which there is just in the most basic primal sense, she's a woman, you're a man, she has a pussy, you have a cock. Okay? Just the primal setting of that is enough for her to be attracted to you. Firstly, okay? This is before you even say a word, before you fuck anything up. Okay? So the setting itself is in your favor. And any positive pre existing bias she might have in you, she's going to look for external proofs of that, right? So she's going to look for your own behavior, your mannerisms, what you do. She's going to look for your friends and your environment for proof of her existing judgments. If you can't get a great girl and you genuinely feel like you're a decent man, look at your fucking friends. Make sure your friends are not fucking douchebags. Men don't want to believe this. They don't want to hear this most of the time. If you can't get the girl you feel like you should be getting, right? Make sure that your friends are not talking shit about you behind your back. Make sure that your friends are actually planting positive existing biases and not negative existing biases. Because If they are planting negative biases into her head, she's going to hyperfixate on them and she's eventually going to find it. Your friends matter a lot. Environment and external stimuli and external proof matters a lot more for women than it does to men. You have to understand that. Environment generally, like, you know, if you are with a girl, like, I don't know, on a bus stop with like 50 or 100 people just walking by, whatever, right? That's a different environment. So the pre-existing notion of any kind of intimacy doesn't exist there. But if you get stuck in an elevator with someone, right, the environment has changed so much, and the environment affects the feminine mind so much that that already, just the setting of that environment, the pre-existing setting, is intimate in nature. So as a man, you have to understand, one, you have to be resourceful enough to facilitate an environment that feels non-judgmental and secure and intimate. The environment itself will help you. And two, make sure your friends are actually your friends. Make sure they're not talking crap behind your back and sabotaging you. This has happened to a lot of guys because men who are weak men and they see their friends as competition, right? They'll go and sabotage their chances with women they want to get on with. Okay, now that we've passed these three things, really quickly, the physiognomy of attraction. And I say this all the time. If you have an intimidating face, so let's say if someone tells you, like, you scare me sometimes, like you have such a serious face, you have such an intimidating face, what do you do? What kind of people do you attract? You attract people who are intimidated by you, and then they sort of like are standoffish, and then you think, like, why are you standoffish? It's because they're intimidated by you. So if you notice in your life that your physiognomy causes people to feel a certain way, that's what we call sort of like the starting point, the point of neutrality. And your point of neutrality isn't always neutral. So let's say if I have an intimidating face, right? Am I going to lean into that and act more standoffish and more intimidating? Of course not. That's going to kill your attractiveness, right? If young men understood this today, like this very simple principle, you'd have a lot better time with women, right? If I have a very, how to say, like an emotional face, like someone who's like very emotionally vulnerable and out there. Some men do. Like some men have like this very sort of like emotion based face, like an expressive face. Should I lean into that and behave more emotionally? Of course not. It's going to tank your attractiveness. If I have an intimidating face, I have to, my behavior has to be the opposite of that. My behavior has to be, I'm going to be so kind and so gentle. So bring your physiognomy into balance. That's what you need to be looking for. I need to be kind, gentle, and empathetic, right? That's going to increase your attraction by an incredible margin. Okay? If you have literally objectively an asymmetrical, ugly face, have beautiful thoughts, share beautiful thoughts, beautiful ideas, beautiful, beautiful, beauty, 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 beauty. Encompass it, represent it, embrace the idea of, if you have a an unhygienic face, right? If you have a face that like just naturally just like doesn't look appetizing or appealing, right? Focus extra hard on cleanliness, purity, so on and so forth. Focus on that. Hyper focus on that. If you have a non-expressive face, some people have this. If you have like a face that's super neutral, you're going to be received as someone who's boring. Focus on excitement, spontaneity, right? If you have a a fearful face, right? If you have like an anxious face, be stoic. If you have a fearful face in your actions, in your behavior, be bold and brave. I could keep going, right? Just understand that whatever you have on your physiognomy, and this you'll know by what people usually tell you. Like when you say, like, when you look at my face, like what kind of guy do you think I like? What kind of person do you think I am? And they'll tell you, right? For example, me, people have told me in the past a lot that I have an intimidating face, that when they looked at me they somehow thought I didn't have like good intentions, like they somehow thought that I was like either rude or mean or just too strict, right? I have a strict face, right? And I all when I was young I always wondered like, hey, like why are people like mean mugging me all the time? Well, if you have an intimidating face, of course people are going to be intimidated by you and they're going to mean mug you. And then you're going to think, hey, I'm not actually doing anything wrong. Why are you mean mugging me? And you're going to become more mean, right? And the cycle continues on, right? When I was young, I had a fight every other day almost, right? With someone because I just couldn't understand like the energy behind it. But the moment I changed that, the moment I shift that, now in communication, I always smile. I'm always, even sometimes overly gentle and kind and nice, right? Completely disappeared, absolutely changed, shifted my energy completely, right? So your face is teaching you a lesson on what your behavior blueprint should be like. If you're able to sort of, well, first discover what's written on your face, then you can know how to behave. That's how you get your attraction back. If you feel ugly, there's no such thing as ugly. It doesn't exist. Ugly, it doesn't exist. Again, a lot of men hate hearing this because they have to take responsibility for, well, everything that's going wrong and right for them in their lives, but it's true. There's no such thing as ugly. There is only misalignment or harmoniousness with your imprint. So look at your face, ask other people, ask other females, hey, when you look at my face, like what kind of person do you think I am? And do the opposite of that. Just encompass the opposite of that in your day-to-day life. And it's going to help you a lot. Okay, this space has gone for long enough, but I hope everyone found it insightful. I wanted to do a big space on this topic because I got asked like 170 billion times, even though this is not usually the topics we cover. Um, but yeah, very difficult nowadays to be a virtuous man. It is worth it. Make the decision, but understand that you have to compromise certain things and sort of like handicap yourself on sort of like in the competitive field of society and of modernity if you do it. But the prize, and the value of it is being true to yourself, being a true, strong, kind, empathetic man, a gentle but yet strong, presence. And the greatest value and the greatest price is something that most men who say otherwise, most men who prioritize money and cars and blah blah blah, all that bullshit, who glorify their sexually deviant lifestyles or whatever, they will never have the value and quality of partner who will prime their aura like you will. You don't need any money for this. They will never have that. So it's absolutely, I'm telling you right now, it's 110% worth it, you guys. Um, like, serve to attract that woman into your life, and you'll have a better sex life than any dude who like fucks 100 chicks or whatever they want to say or however they want to word it. One each, like a new one every day, because the amount of depth and sexual unfolding that you're gonna have with your particular woman, it can't even come close. So yeah, the context of your whole history plays into it. When you don't have that context of that history with a woman, it doesn't work. So All right. Much love to everyone. Thanks for listening in. Amazing questions today. Um, yeah. Have a great day, everyone. Bye bye.